tell us how it was putting together the Cuban Club shows in like 1986.
The only difficult part I want to say wasn't so much like putting the shows together. That kind of came easily, booking and getting the crowd to show up, but it was production. The electricity and the technology in that old space was really bad. Again, Mike Abishi Flashpoint would set things up, and thank God he's a half electrician. And we're talking fuses. There weren't breakers or anything, and they were on the lighting pole right behind the band shell. And there were numerous times where we were blowing those things. After a point in time, he rewired all that. But that was probably the most difficult part, was making sure that we had enough to do the lights and the sound, because they weren't ready for that. That building hadn't been improved probably since the 40s.
Wow.
Wasn't it a language barrier you had with the Spanish guys?
And well, there was another thing there. You had to know Spanish, because almost everybody we dealt with at the club didn't speak English. And of course they look at what we were doing as totally foreign, because they'd never seen a punk band in their life. But they had one of the biggest bars they ever had, and of course we were welcome from that point on.
Right.
Because we sold a lot of beer.
Right.
And all you have to do is point, beer? Yeah, that's what we want.
They also had another thing, is that after every show they'd tell us there was all this damage going on, and we always used to pay a fine to them. Then after about 6 months we found out that all they were doing was collecting money so they could paint the building.
Yes, they could do some
improvements.
Every time we saw another part of the wall had been painted or something, and then we figured it out, and somebody told us that it was all the damage that the punks were making was paying for their rehab of the building.
That first show at the Cuban Club, one of the things I remember was we didn't really know what we were doing, and the guy explained to us that after we thought we were just going to make all this money over and above after we pay everybody off, it's all ours.
Right.
And the guy explained to us, no, we get 85% of everything after a split point. We didn't know what those things were, and Tony and I look at each other like, huh? I mean, we're already making like a bunch of money, thinking this is like the greatest thing in the world. And I look over and I saw all those shirts coming in. I'll never forget. Who sells those? I said. Well, we do. Well, we got to get a piece of that action. Sure. That was like the very first show where it was like, oh, well, this is how everything is done. Oh, okay.
So they actually wanted a high percentage rate, like 85% after you paid the bills?
It might have been a little less than 85.
They wanted a bonus.
But it was in their contract that they got more. We never looked at it that close. Like, really?
Yeah,
we just thought
naive about it.
As soon as you hit break.
Is that guy, I think I've said this before, it's the same guy that owned a club in New Jersey that was really...
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, really famous. And he happened to be the manager for the band. We didn't know that, but he asked us, he said, so how many shows have you done? You did a great job. And we said, you're our first. And he just fell flat on his back. He went, this is the first show. I said, yeah. He said, oh, man, you've done this show better than anybody else. We've been on tour. So he just started us off on it.
Right.
City Gardens, that's it. The guy from City Gardens.
Wow.
Yeah.
City Gardens was the booking agency?
No, he was the club in New Jersey.
Oh.
I mean, it's legendary. You go up there, I mean, everybody
He's
knows.
probably helpful for us to get, our name. Because back in
he
that
was
day,
real cool, yeah.
back in that day, and you used to go to the shows.
Of course I did.
But one of the things we did, and that was where, we kind of worked this out, we always had a better PA than almost anybody else put up there. Spent as much money and more, many times, on the PA than we did on the bands.
Right.
And the bands would show up and go, they didn't have a problem with it because, holy crap, we got a real PA? Actually, they said, holy shit, we got a real PA? And it's like, well, yeah. And that was Flashpoint, Mike Abishi.
Of course.
And it was like, yeah. So every time a band would show up, I'm pretty sure they would tell everybody else. It's like, we're not playing on crap. This is a real show, guys. And that helped the whole situation.
I know the guy made a career out of writing books about it.
Yeah, they hated Tampa ever since because we were, quote unquote, the guys that did it, and we didn't. When you go to the Cuban Club, you got a length and you got the short side of things.
Right.
And Mike always had enough snake to go around and to the stage. He had a 150-foot snake.
Right.
The sound man for Henry Rollins says, no, you always run the snake straight to the stage. What do you think you're doing? Well, the snake is full of these little hairline wires. They'll break if anybody steps on them, and our crowd will step on it. I think any crowd would have stepped on it. So they forced us to go across the way, and when Henry Rollins' Black Flag started, at some point they started stomping on the snake. And the sound man, as opposed to going to Tony or myself or to a security guy, which we always had, there's the other thing, we always had a bunch of security. We always made sure that, the people were somewhat safe. If you want to beat each other up, that's okay, but don't beat the innocents. They literally, the guy pulled out of Mike Abdishi's toolbox a hammer that was underneath the soundboard and went out in the crowd to go pang on somebody's head. But it never made it to anybody's head. There was hands on that hammer. It got taken away, and they pounded on his head. And for years, I don't know where or when I ever got rid of it, but I had this bloody towel that was from that show because I thought it was going to be some kind of memento.
Sold on eBay.
Yeah, that was way before eBay, And I'm not kidding. I had it sitting there all with that dried blood. We literally were worried he was going to be, permanently damaged. They took a hammer to his head, and it's like, what a stupid thing to do.
Right.
It was one of those things, and it's got to have happened at many locations. I don't think that we were unique in that aspect of anything. It ends up where, for him to take that attitude, and I forget if he wrote that up in, it was another band that had their cartoon or comic book, wasn't it? That was at the Butthole Surfers that had that one. But anyway, but for that to be like, I will never play Tampa again. And little did he know he's playing for us the next time just in another town at St. Petersburg.
Right.
It took him actually 10 years to come and play Tampa again.
You got to come back.
He
We had to supply
he played the first Lollapalooza in Orlando.
Yeah.
Right? But that was still, 90, 91?
Yeah, but
so
then-
that was like 5 or 6 years later before he'd even come to Florida.
Right, we brought him back at Rollins Band. We brought him back at Janice Landing, and he had to
I was there.
He had to have a police guard with
Escort.
him all day long.
Oh my
Police
God.
escort,
Talk about paranoia.
I took him to the old YMCA because they had dead weights, and he always, for half an hour before he gets up on stage, he would lift weights, and he was so appreciative that it was like a real old school gym. None of that fancy new stuff. It was all, just what he wanted, free weights.
Right.
And God, he was all sweaty, but he was pumped up. And when he hit the stage, it was always like
In his Nike running shorts.
Yeah.
Barefoot, no shirt.
no shirt on.
I remember that show. It was a great show. He had Chuck Biscuits playing in his band at that show. Great show.
Absolutely. Well, you see, and he came back and he did all that spoken word stuff, and I never really cared for that. I'm sorry. The Black Flag had a history, and the music was really good, and the lyrics were good. Everybody got into it. And then all of a sudden it was like he wanted them to revere him as I like to call him, he thinks he's God. And that was, I think, a real, in my world, that's where I started thinking, that's too much ego.
It's not punk rock anymore.
No.
Two of you couldn't be running around at the same
Yeah,
time.
that's right. I knew a lot more than he did, and he didn't believe that. I tried to point that out to him.
He didn't appreciate it.
No, he was a lot bigger than I was, so I would say you're probably right, Henry.
But I do remember coming up to go to the Discharge show.
Oh,
And
right,
those
yeah.
guys refused to play.
No, the singer refused to play.
Was it that what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he
Why was
refused
that?
to play because he didn't think the PA was appropriate.
Correct. He did not play because he thought he'd strain his voice.
Was it because of the monitors? Or?
No, because it was basically it was in that.
It was
It was in what is the honeypot now. The stage was a load bales of hay with a big piece of plywood on the top.
That was where.
That's what was the stage?
Yeah,
I did not remember that part.
That was the stage. And,
what was,
and we banned smoking.
Right?
What was the guy's name that ran it?
I can't remember who that.
Come on, it was a guy. Steve Cable.
Steve Cable, yeah.
Steve Cable. Yeah. And we had extension cords running from the Ritz Theater
next door.
Because there was no electricity
there
in
was
the
no
building.
power. And
And the monitors were
there
like
weren't any monitors.
Well, no, there were. They were like little Sony stereo speakers. And the minute we turned things on and gave it a little bit, they literally burnt. They fried. They smoked.
Yeah,
and wasn't that the show where we told everybody they're not going to play and we'll give you a discount, and if you stay, you can watch all the local bands, and most everybody stayed.
Right. Yeah, it was BP.
Hardly anybody left. Were you on that gig?
We weren't on that gig. Yeah.
Wasn't he on that show? No.
We weren't on that
But
gig.
that was funny.
But I do remember
the rest of the bands, they just said, don't take any notice of him, he's just a big wanker, you know. And that was it.
And as a testament to your business ethics, I do remember that you paid them anyhow.
Yeah.
Because you didn't. He claimed that you didn't fulfill their contract.
No,
so you paid them even though and they didn't play. Yeah. And I remember how pissed off I was. I was like, that's the least punk rock fucking thing I've ever heard. They took the money and they didn't play.
And
they had a room full of people waiting to hear them play. Yeah. That I never had another opportunity to see Discharge play after that.
No, I don't think anybody did.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not fucking punk rock.
That singer, and
they did. They were having problems with him. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The rest of the band was saying, we're having lots of problems with him.
See, back in the day, you would think most people would just do, like you said, be punk about it, and whatever. There's people here, as opposed to screw these guys.
Right.
They screwed us, so we're gonna. The audience, I don't think we lost 10 people out of the crowd. No. We gave a $5 discount, and everybody came and the other locals all played like champs.
Yeah, I don't remember who the local bands were that night.
They were pro. I'll never forget the Colonel at that place. I remember we did Bad Brains there, and there were fuel tanks in the back of the the Clearwater National Guard, and Bad Brains were smoking spliffs out back. I was with them, just to supervise, and
they smoked them properly.
Well, somebody had to have a light for them. But he comes back going, guys, not for nothing, but there's fumes back here. This could be really dangerous. There's about 5,000 gallons of fuel you're standing on where you're smoking your joints. Yeah. Otherwise, just get away from there. And he was pretty cool. I don't know whatever happened to that guy, if he ever got in any trouble or not. But
no, I remember I saw him somewhere, and he said he'd retired. It got started.
That room was a basketball court with about 5 to maybe 10 feet around it, and that was the entire room. I mean, that's really all that Clearwater National Guard was, like one regulation basketball court with some distance around it. That's all he did there.
It had a great vibe to it.
Oh, it was way cool.
Yeah. I was never in it.
Yeah, it was cool. I don't know, Buttholes, Bad Brains.
Yeah, a couple of other things.
I can't remember who else we did there.
There was a chick that ended up on stage during Girlfriends in Porno, right? And I
she was on acid,
right? And I actually hip thrust her off into the audience, and the skinhead girls all grabbed her and ripped her clothes off of her, beat her up, and then she was actually running around the venue naked. And Tony actually gave her a BP shirt, took her into the back room, and all I remember is this very large black security guard, right? And you guys gave her pizza, and the pizza was like falling down into her crotch because she was tripping and not paying attention. And I can remember the black security guard looking at me and going, "Man, she's got a big old posy." Right? Fucking, you guys don't remember that shit at all, huh?
I remember every minute of it because I
had to deal with it.
Deal with it the whole time.
Well, I started with a six-pack.
That acid shit just doesn't wear off, does it?
No, that was memorable for another reason, was the fact that the senator for that area, Bob Johnson, was having his, I believe it was his Christmas party right next door in the whatever that place is. What's the big hall down there?
Robarts Arena.
Robarts Arena.
Yeah, Robarts.
They had, they all came out in their little penguin suits and stuff and la-di-da.
As they were leaving there.
As they were leaving there, I was walking out with this naked chick. Naked young lady
with pizza all down her leg.
Pizza all down her thing, and we just came up, and I was just putting her in her car, and he came up and he just looked at her and, "What's going on?" And I told him what was going on. He went, "It'll be the last show you'll ever do in this town," and it was.
He wasn't lying, huh?
No, I wasn't lying. He wasn't lying either. He was so embarrassed. Well, I would know if he's been embarrassed by being faced with a naked girl on an acid trip, but
he wasn't gay, was he?
He may have done, but I know his wife and everybody, all the mayor was there, and
he saved
they kind of like in the end. Then we got a warning. Don't think of putting another.
We did do shows in the market,
but not in Sarasota.
Yeah.
That was our one great moment.
It was a great show.
In fact,
Absolutely
the other day when I was with Kevin Seconds here, he was talking about that show. He said how much fun he had at that show. It's, he always remembers that show.
7 Seconds was always one of the great.
Yeah,
Kevin Seconds was probably one of the best of the guys.
The whole band.
Really nice guy.
Yeah, absolutely
Terrific.
And
he's still the same.
I do remember that now because I remember the dignitaries as they were leaving their whatever commemoration.
That's a good word, Dave.
Yeah. Two of them, dignitaries commemoration.
This is a punk rock film, and you can't use big words like that.
Yeah, no matter what, it seemed like the out-of-town skinheads, which skinheads was a big part of the scene at the point in time, but our guys locally were pretty cool. The O-Town skins were always kind of bad, and I always want to blame the O-Towns because they wanted to damage.
Do you know this is being released in O-Town?
They couldn't do that in their town, but they could do it in our town and get away with it. And then we had to nab them many times. You were there. We'd grab them, just take their whole body out of the pit and put them on the side. I made one guy stand in the corner, like in school, with his nose in the corner, and I told him, if you move, I guarantee you and your friends will never come to another show again. And he never moved until I told him it was okay. About 10 minutes went by where I said, okay, tell your guys to settle down. That was probably where the violent part of it came from, was from the out-of-towners. Pigpen, you were talking about, got hurt by them. That's the guys that stomped on his jaw. Was that Pigpen?
I think it was.
Yeah. And
rest in peace.
It's sad because he was nothing but a super, super nice guy.
Total pacifist.
And they were total violent.
I remember Anthony went home with some girl, and then stole her car and drove it to Miami.
I know her very well.
Yeah,
I knew her very well.
I think she played his organ.
Right?
She actually showed up when we closed the old Orpheum, and moved to the new location. I'm sitting there after we had cleared everything out, and I look out the glass, and there she is. She's kind of gone through rehab, although I can't guarantee nothing. But that whole thing was all fueled on heroin. He had shot her up, and she said that was the end of it for me for years, a couple of years before I ever got off. And she woke up, and her car was gone, and money was missing out of her purse. And a couple of days later, we're down there at Daddy Cool Records down in Bradenton, and I answered the phone, and her voice is on, and I recognized it. I can't remember her name, but she was always a groupie at all the shows. Oh, that's right, we're not supposed to mention names. And one of your girlfriends, I'm pretty sure. But literally, she said, do you know how I can get a hold of the Chili Peppers management? And I said, well, let's just, Margaret, is that you? Yeah. I said, what's going on? Well, my car's been stolen, and there's $300 missing out of my purse. I had Anthony over here that night, and the next morning it was gone. And sure enough, within a day or two, they found her car at the Tampa airport, windows open, key in the ignition, not running or anything. And
running out of gas by then.
He had been left behind by the band because they were flying home. And that was from was that a London Victory Club show?
No, that was Janice.
No, that was Janice.
Janice show?
Yeah.
Okay.
They went to another gig, and he flew to the gig because he stayed.
He needed money to get to the next town.
So he took her money.
And never owned up to it, and she said that was where, I remember there was a lot of drug activity back in that era. With those guys especially.